Hey everybody, welcome back to Sounds Like a Drum, Cadence Independent Media Production. Today, we are exploring the idea of activating the shell by moving through a bunch of tunings with this bass drum. We've brought up the idea of activating the shell in the past a little bit and utilizing that as a way to get the most sound and tone and resonance out of a drum. And today, we're going to find exactly the optimal spot for this particular drum. By the way, if you haven't already, please follow the link below to our Patreon. It's the best way to help us continue to make these episodes. Lots of extra content over there. The link is below. Go check it out. Today, we're going to start off with finger tight on this bass drum. Let's hear what that sounds like. For these demonstrations today, in addition to our normal mic setup, we are adding a microphone to the shell of the drum to help pick up changes that are going to happen over the course of all the tunings we're going to do today. This mic will not be part of the full demoed sounds. It'll only be soloed at times so that we can hear the shell on its own. For today's demos, we have removed all muffling from inside of this drum to help get the maximum amount of resonance possible, which does mean we're going to hear some basketball-y overtones, some other unusual things in there, but this is all about getting that shell moving. For each of these tunings, we're going to do our standard single hits and hear it in the context of a groove, and then within that groove, we're going to move from hearing all of the standard mics we use to just the shell mic so you can hear the comparison. Now, let's circle back and hear the single hits with just the shell mic, nothing else. The overall resonant frequency for this barely on there tuning is only 40 Hertz. It's extremely low. We're not getting much out of the heads because there's not very much tension on them, and we're also not getting much out of the shell because, again, there's just not a lot of energy getting transferred at this tension. That said, if you're using headphones, which hopefully you are, you're going to be hearing a very low frequency, a fundamental underneath this. It's extremely low, but it's definitely there. It really is imperative that we take our listening environment into account here. In this case, if you're listening to us right now, you're going to want to have headphones. Again, it's really important. And if you're experimenting with this with your own drums, do consider the space that you're playing in because it's really going to affect how you experience the low end from your drums. And don't forget also to stick around to the very end where we're going to have a back-to-back comparison of all of these. Tuning number 2, a little closer to my preferred low range for this drum. Here we go. Now let's hear the single hits for the shell mic at this tuning. Despite only going up 5 Hertz, we're now at 45, I did give a fair amount of attention added to this drum, and it is instantly more boomy for me right here, but we are noticing that the sound in the shell mic not significantly different, and more importantly, not significantly louder or fuller than the previous tuning. As we move through this tensioning, you will notice that as we have a little more tension on the head, the whole thing starts to move and starts to activate, but it's actually the heads that are activating more than anything else because we need that tension in order for the head to continue to resonate after we strike it. You may have noticed that we're not using toms today. Another thing that can affect your experience of the low end from the bass drum is sympathetic resonance with like a low-tuned floor tom, for instance. That can affect the sound of your whole kit, maybe in a positive way, but if you're really trying to dig into a single drum like this, it's best to not have a lot of other ones around. All right, tuning number 3, the middle of our journey. And now, just the shell mic. This tuning is jumping us up to 58 Hz. We're halfway to the end. This is starting to have more of a noticeable sustained note to it. But again, things aren't really changing that much in the side mic. It's interesting because we were expecting as we moved through this that we would get to a point where we're getting a big boomy tonal sound out of the drum and that would spike in the shell mic, but that's simply not what we're experiencing. Never forget, too, that your proximity to this drum is going to change your experience as well. And I am on the side where the head is, so I'm experiencing a lot more low end as I move through these tunings, hitting me. But there's not a whole lot going to the side because I'm in the line of fire with the air, and the shell mic isn't. Tuning number 4, starting to get pretty high. This is moving us into bop or world music range. It's starting to sound less like a bass drum and more like a tenor drum, possibly. It's still a cool sound. Let's see if the shell mic is getting anything new. We're all the way up to 66 Hz now, and again, we're not getting a spike on that microphone that would tell us that we've hit some magical spot with resonance in the drum, even though my experience of the resonance is escalating a lot. We have been noticing that in the port mic, there's a lot more air moving a lot faster, and it is getting louder in that microphone. But again, that's where the sound is leaving the drum, so that makes sense. And with a mic on the side, the shell is having pretty much the same experience. Let's bump it up to our final, essentially choked tuning. And what could we possibly be getting in the shell mic at this point? We are officially at 80 Hz, an entire octave up from where we started, which is essentially the usable range of this drum if we consider this final tuning usable. We have not found that there is a shell behavior going on in any of these tunings that gives us the impression that it's the right tuning or the most activated or the most resonant with regards to the shell. What this means for us is that all of these tunings are usable, and the last thing we need to be doing is being concerned with the experience of the shell as we're tuning. We can just tune the drum so that it sounds good to us, and if we're happy with the sound, that's all that matters. As we move through some of the later tunings in these demos, you may have started to hear some non-drum noises going on in the room here. Sometimes the baseboards are going off, or the wires on the snare in this last tuning we're starting to have kind of a crazy experience. These are all things that we might think have to do with the shell hitting some kind of peak resonance, but the fact is there are resonant frequencies in every space that you're going to be playing in, and certain parts of the frequency spectrum are going to freak it out more than other ones. This is purely about the heads, it's purely about the tuning, and, muffling will simmer it down a little bit, but it stands to reason that we really just need to focus on the heads. The first thing that I did when we started working on this today at the very lowest tuning was placing my hand on the shell while I hit the drum with the bass drum pedal. And the very lowest tuning that was about finger tight, I didn't feel a lot of vibration through the shell. With the second one all the way to the top, I felt a similar amount of vibration through the shell through all of those tunings. This is one of those things that people talk about as activating the shell, but the fact is that if there's enough tension on there for the head to resonate at all, then the shell is resonating too. The whole idea here is that the shell is a conduit for energy from the batter head to the reso and back again. And so the material matters, the surface matters, it does all matter, but it's not as though we need to be stressing out about giving the shell what it needs. We didn't necessarily set out today to bust a myth, but we're going to call this one busted. This is not a thing that we need to be concerned about. Again, it all comes back to sound, feel, and what is giving us what we need to make the music that we want to make and enjoy playing our instrument. If you want to learn a little bit more about this, we have a couple of videos from past seasons that talk about the pitch of a shell with hardware, without hardware, trying to tune the drum to the drum's pitch. It's worth checking out for sure. And as always, please check out the Patreon below. It's the best way to help us continue to get to do this here. There's lots of extra content on there and a wonderful community that you can be a part of. Like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to hear about all of our new videos. And please, if you have stories about anything to do with activating the shell and getting something positive out of it, or maybe something negative, we'd love to hear.